Hey bookworms! Today I'm going to be talking about a couple of my favorite titles from the past couple of months, and I hope you get a new book recommendation out of it. The first one I'm going to talk about is The Undocumented Americans by Karla Cornejo Villavicencio. This book is amazing, hard to read, and definitely very important and relevant right now. The book is, obviously you can tell from the title, about the folks who live in the U.S. who don't have paperwork, and so even though they are part of society, part of the fabric of our communities, and absolutely part of the workforce, they aren't receiving the benefits that so many of us do receive because we're part of that society. And so this book really took me in a lot of places that I didn't quite know about. So for example, she goes into the emergency workers who cleaned up after 9/11, and many of them were undocumented, which means that the hazards that they faced were something that was not kept track well of. And so even though they did this important and very patriotic duty to the country, now many of them are facing extremely serious health problems and don't have access to health care. Another aspect that she goes into is she's a journalist, so she goes to Flint, where many folks didn't have access to clean water, and some still do not. And she interviews people. One thing that I learned is that when people went door to door trying to inform people and let them know, don't drink the water, don't drink the water, they didn't have translators, so many people who only spoke Spanish were not reached. And when it was done by people in uniform, so the example she gives as National Guard, many undocumented folks didn't answer the door because somebody in uniform was knocking, and so that means they were totally missed and didn't receive that information and weren't able to keep themselves safe. Definitely recommend this book. Absolutely amazing. She also talks about her own family and her own history, and yeah, she's a wonderful person. She's a very strong writer, and I really recommend it. The next book I'm going to talk about is called Thick and Other Essays by Tressie, McMillan, Cottom. This book is really good. I'm going to read the table of contents so that you can see kind of an overview of what the topics of this book are. Thick, in the name of beauty, dying to be competent, know your whites, black is over or special black, the price of fabulousness, black girlhood interrupted. And I'm going to read a short section. This moment of global inequality demands incompetent subjects. The status quo and ever-intensifying versions of it require incompetent consumers who will learn to want technological solutions to their political problems. Are you starving even though there is food? Here is an app to connect you with the charity that is filling that hole in our ragged social safety net. Are global profits being extracted by the financial class while driving down wages and quality of work, even for people with expensive college educations? Here is a website where you can purchase a credential that might help you get a new job, one where you will likely be in the same position again in 18 months. Your structural incompetence generates ever more sophisticated consumption goods, goods that reinforce status games of who is deserving and who is not. This book is really amazing. She brings up a lot of things that I hadn't considered, and I'm really grateful to her for that. It's also fairly short, so if you need something that's a quick read, I really recommend it. The next book I'm going to recommend is With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. This book is amazing. Everything she writes is absolutely slam dunk winner, and this book is no different. I think this one is my favorite of her novels in verse, her YA novels, and particularly because of the main character. So this book is about Imani, who is a senior in high school, and also a teen mom. And I realized, like, right away when I was listening to this book, I listened to it on audio, that I hadn't read a book about a teen mom that really gave them a very dignifying and robust story. And so and this book does that and so much more. She's a aspiring chef, and so there are recipes in the book that are really poetic and fun. Her relationship with her little crush is Malachi is just the sweetest and really healthy. I love that it fights back against that stereotype that sexualizes anyone who was sexually active as a teen. Absolutely recommend. I cried a little bit at the end, and yeah, just really recommend. She's a great writer. The last book I'm going to talk about is Piranesi. This is a new book, very new book. It's by Susanna Clarke, and I didn't love it. I'm still glad I read it because it's a really, really interesting thought experiment, but so many people did love it, and I am not one of them. So this book is, how do I talk about this book without giving too much away? It's in another world, in another almost even dimension, in this very, very humongous building. We aren't quite sure what the building is, right? Where there are, you know, different ecosystems and different statues, and there are 15 people in the world, and one of them is Piranesi. That's the main character. And probably the reason I didn't love it is that the plot didn't really start until the third section, which is, I think, like page 85. So the whole first section is just describing the world, and the world is really, really cool, but I wanted to get to the plot faster, and then I thought that the plot was pretty cut and dry once we did get there, but again, really, really interesting, really experimental, and a lot of people did love it, so you might. Thanks so much. This has been my first book talk. I hope to do these more often. I think that last year I had a really great year of reading. I read 220 books, and I got a lot of messages of people wanting to know, like, how did I read so many books? What books would I recommend if somebody wanted to try to read more? And so I think this is a pretty accessible way to address that. Thank you so much for your interest. Have a great day. Read on.